Hi, it's Jane from Jane Rowland Photography, and this video is all about the school prom because of course this year all the proms were cancelled because of coronavirus. And if you were one of those people who were really excited and bought your prom dress months and months in advance, the chances are it spent the last year hanging up in your wardrobe, still in its packaging, never having been worn, which is a real shame, not just because it's an expensive item of clothing, but also because the prom marks a rite of passage in a young person's life. They might be starting employment, they might be moving on to further education, they might even be leaving home, and that really special time deserves to be celebrated and documented. The good news is you might not be able to go to the prom, but you still have a really good reason to get that dress out the wardrobe, do your hair and makeup, and that reason is your very own prom dress photo shoot. And in this video I'm going to show you exactly how you can do that. So this video is not aimed at professional photographers, it's not aimed at people with fancy cameras, and it's not aimed at people who are experts in Photoshop. Your prom dress photo shoot can be taken with the camera on your smartphone. However, it is aimed at people who want a portrait rather than just a snapshot. And a portrait means some thought and effort has gone into planning your photo shoot because you want a really professional result. One of the things I do suggest you do from the start is, if you are using a smartphone, then have a look at your smartphone camera manual and just check the settings, especially low light settings like your ISO. I don't want to get too technical in this video, but it is certainly worth having a look because you can get professional results with a smartphone. I am going to break the process down into about 7 steps. Now, first of all, I am going to give you a bit of a disclaimer because I didn't do my prom dress photo shoot using natural light. I wasn't planning on doing a YouTube video at the time, so I did use my studio lighting. However, my studio lighting is designed to imitate natural light. The umbrella that I use is window sized, and so it's perfectly possible to do a beautiful prom dress photo shoot using your window light. If you think back to the master painters, the old masters, they used window light all the time, and that is something I will be coming back to later on, particularly Rembrandt. So my first tip is find the light in your home, and by that I mean you go to every room in your house and you look at the quality of the light. Ideally, the biggest window is best because there's more light coming through. You want to give yourself the best chance of having a well-lit portrait. However, it cannot be direct sunlight. If you've got really bright light streaming through the window onto your subject, it's gonna completely ruin your shot. And that's why I recommend that you do this twice. You do it in the morning and you do it in the afternoon, because the light moves around your house, so it will be really different from one time of day to the other. So if you have chosen what you think is the best window, but in the morning it's flooded with sunlight, leave it till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then the chances are it will be the perfect light. So you have to really go around and make the effort to look at which is the best light in your house, and it might not be the room that you first thought. It could be a bedroom, it could even be the kitchen, but light is the first and most important thing you have to look for. So the second point I would make is to study the light on your subjects, on your subject's face. And to do this, ask them, whoever you're photographing, to face the window and rotate really slowly so you can see how the light changes on their face, particularly the shadows as they turn around, especially as they turn away from the light. I did this myself using window light this time, and if you look at the quality of the light in this first image, most of the face is lit up by the window. She is facing towards the window slightly, but not absolutely directly facing it, and there's a nice little bit of shadow on the side of the face, which I will come back to later on. And also, very importantly, she has got some really nice catch lights in her eyes, and that's one of the things that you do need to look at really carefully, because you do want some catch lights and some of those white lights in the eye. The second photograph is where she is 90 degree to the window, so one half is in complete shade, the other half is lit by window light, and that creates a more dramatic lighting effect, which is really good, but it's a little bit riskier because If you're not going to do post-processing afterwards, then those shadows may not be the best quality. So that is, you know, depends what you want. If you want a bit more dramatic light, you can still do that, but you might have to use some tin foil or some white paper to reflect the shadows back so it's not too dark on one side of the face. And the third picture is when she's turning slightly away from the light, and as you see, a lot of the light is in shadow. This is not a position that I would recommend, particularly if you look closely at one of the eyes. It's lost the catch light altogether. So of those three poses, the best direction is when she is slightly facing the light at a 45-degree angle. Now, I did mention the old masters produce some beautifully lit portraits. What I didn't mention was something called Rembrandt lighting, which is something that photographers still look for today. And if you look at this Rembrandt painting, you'll see that one of his eyes has a little triangle of light in between the nose shadow and the cheek shadow, and that is a classic characteristic of Rembrandt lighting. And if you look at the first photograph that I showed you, where my subject is slightly facing the window, very, very subtly you can see a hint of Rembrandt lighting there. There's a little lighter patch in between the nose and the cheek. It's very subtle because the light is very soft, but it is there, and that's one of the key things to look for when you do study the light on your subject's face. The third thing you need to do is to look at your background, which is really important because you don't want anything in the background which is going to take attention away from your subject. So have a look and see if there's any distractions. You might have to move the furniture out of the way, and so you've got a clear space behind. But what you could also do is you could find a bed sheet or a throw, make sure it's ironed, and then have someone hold it up behind your subject, so you just have got a plain colour, light or dark, behind your subject, so all the emphasis is on your subject. Now, if you wanted to really you know, go for it and have a really professional looking portrait, then you could even invest in some photographic paper. It's not massively expensive, it's about £30, but it does give you a background that is uncreased, it's very plain, and there's a range of colours and textures that you can choose from. And I can put a link below to Amazon. It's sold on Amazon. There's lots and lots of variety. So that is something that you might want to invest in. Or you could dress the room behind your subject. So you are going to place carefully elements like a table or some flowers, you know, really go to town and set the scene. Point 4 is to improvise. You may have to improvise because it's not always easy to find the perfect background and the perfect lighting for your subject. So what you might do is if you've got a window and you think, oh, it's just too bright, you can invest in a really inexpensive shower curtain. I've got one myself, and you can just hang them at the window. Again, I'll put a link below. They're about £5. They're really, really good at diffusing the light. Net curtains will also work as well. Try putting different things over your window to change the quality of the light. Also, it sounds strange, but if you have a garage, that's a really good studio location for a portrait. If you place your subject right at the entrance of the garage where it's still some light but the background of the garage is really dark, and just watch again, change the direction so you're looking at the shadows on the face and place them at an angle to the light, then you can get some really beautiful portraits using your garage. Experiment with the things that you've got around the house, because you can create your own studio setup using things that are already in your home. 2 quick things not to forget about, and I say this from experience because I have been on many photo shoots when people have just forgot these 2 things. One is making sure you've ironed out the creases. Now, in a prom dress, because of the material that prom dresses are made of, you might just have to hang it out of its carrier to let the creases drop out rather than have an iron on it, or maybe steam it. But creases can really ruin a photo shoot if you haven't got the creases out of your garment. And the second thing is nail varnish. The amount of shoots I've done where I've had to digitally paint in the nail varnish because it's been chipped, and you know, especially when you've got a mother holding a newborn baby, they're not paying attention, of course, to their nails. They've got lots of other things to be thinking about, but it is something that's really, really noticeable if you have got chipped nails. It's better just to not wear any nail varnish at all than have nail varnish that's chipped. So do remember those 2 things because they are often overlooked in a photo shoot. So the next point is about posing, because even professional photographers really struggle to pose a subject, but there are a few really easy pointers. The first is don't have your subject facing straight towards the camera with their body. You need to turn them slightly to one side. They can still face the subject with their face, but have their body to one side, because that instantly is more slimming. And make sure that their weight is on the back foot, so that creates a curve in their front leg, which is very feminine and elegant. Now, hands can be the most difficult things and the most awkward things to pose if you're a photographer and if you are being photographed yourself. So I've got three quick and easy things that you can do with your hand. The first one is you can have one arm across your middle and you can rest on it with your other elbow, and then you can put your hand gracefully on the side of the cheek. That's one pose that really works. About hands, you want to keep them, if possible, side onto the camera rather than facing the camera, and also not clenched and not really stiff. Soft hands, that's what we're looking for, soft, gentle hands. So that's the first pose you can do. The second pose you can do, which is quite easy, is that you can put hands on hips, but again, soft hands and asymmetrical. So one hand is further down the leg than the other hand. That's another really easy pose that you can do. Another pose you can do is having both hands, one on top of the other, palms facing your subject, and that can create a really lovely serene feel to your portrait. I've included this image because even though it's a lovely portrait, there are two posing mistakes that I did make here. One of them was I didn't leave a space between the arm and the side of the body, which you're meant to do. You need to pull that elbow back a little bit so there's actually a gap, and that accentuates the waist. If you don't have that gap, it actually makes the subject look wider than they really are. The other mistake, if you look at the other hand, it's what I call phantom hand. It's a hand with no arm attached to it, so it looks like something off the Munsters, if you remember that far back. So you do want a portion of that wrist showing, so you can actually see that that hand is attached to an arm and it's not just a random hand floating around by itself. And the final thing I would say is mix it up. And by mix it up, make sure you've got some variety. You don't have to move too much to have variety, and variety could be a close-up shot, it could be a torso shot, and it could be a full length shot. So it could just be the distance from your camera to the subject. That creates variety. Also, variety can be created just by closing the subject's eyes. That creates a really different feel to an image. If the subject closes her eyes and just faces downwards slightly, that creates a really lovely effect as well. Props are great. I wanted to add some kind of prop to this image, so I bought this little headdress. It was literally about £12 on Amazon. It was really cheap, but I think it's really effective. But also, if you don't want to have a prop, even just putting a clip in the hair or tying the hair up or having it long, just varying the style of the hair throughout the shoot can create a real difference to how your subject looks. And also the expression on the face. Not a massive cheesy grin, I would recommend, but soft smiles, little smiles, or actually serious. You know, you can have a lovely image where your subject isn't smiling at all. So there are some guidelines for doing your prom dress photo shoot, but they are just guidelines to give your images a more professional feel. At the end of the day, if you've got better ideas and you're more creative than me, then you just go with what you think works for you and your subject and have fun, and that's the most important thing. And if you don't want to miss out on any future photography tips and tricks, then do subscribe to my channel.